Hello and welcome back to High Impact Interviewing. This is part 3, which is talking about alternative interviews. So we already heard about more of the traditional interviews. Now we're going to talk about panel interviews. These are when you are going to be in front of, I would say, 2 or more people. Most of your interviews are probably going to be set up this way, especially if you have a full day of interviews or a half day of interviews. So beforehand, ask your interview schedule. It's nice to know what you're up against. It's nice to be able to research the people who are scheduled to interview you so that you can look them up on LinkedIn or on the company website so you know who you're talking to. And so you can also feel like you know them a little personally beforehand and refer to things that you read about them on the site. This would be part of your research. So when you're addressing a panel, and this really goes for 3 or more people, it's really important to think about your eye contact and be able to express yourself and give credit to the person asking the question, but also respect everyone else in the panel. So when you're answering a question, start by looking at the person who asked it, and then slowly throughout your answer, make your way through the rest of the panelists. So look at each of them for a little bit as you're answering the question. And by the time you're done with your answer, your eyes should be back on the person who asked you the question. And so that acknowledges the fact that one person asked you the question, but also respects everyone else on the panel. Some of you may experience or may have experienced multiple candidate interviews. So this is when you are with a couple other people who are applying for the same position that you are. I've worked with people who did not expect it before and it completely threw them off. I would say you should normally know what you're in for and what your interview schedule looks like, but if it's something that is a surprise to you, being prepared in general for interviews will help you overcome any extra pressure or surprises that you may find. And simply being part of a multiple candidate interview is just even more pressure to do what you already know to do. So this really comes into play where star answers become so much more important. Imagine if there's 3 of you and you're all asked the same question. What if your answer is going to sound very much like someone else's answer? You don't want to lie. You don't want to make up something else because you don't want to repeat them. You want to tell your true answer. So when you tell it, your version and your story become that much more important. So let's say I'm sitting next to Craig, and Craig already told about maybe 3 great qualities that he has, which are communication skills, the ability to think quickly, and then presenting to others. And you thought, geez, 2 of those, presenting to others and working quickly, those are 2 things that I really value in myself, and I know that this employer would want to know about me. So this kind of goes back to part 2, which I left incomplete, to talk about some more of the quick answers. Star answers become so much more important. Yes, the behavioral questions very much, but also these shorter answers. So if you just say, ditto to Craig, I think I'm really good at presenting and that I work quickly through a problem, and I'm also kind and warm with others, that's not going to sound very quality, and it's not going to sound convincing. So whether it's just you or you're in a multiple candidate interview, you need to back up all of your quick answers with a 1 to 2 sentence explanation just to prove that they're true. So if I say I'm really good at presenting, I want to say, I know that I'm very good at presenting, just like Craig seems to be. I always practice my presentations. In the last 2 weeks, I've given 10 to 3 different types of constituents, and I've gotten great feedback from them. Well, that's a lot more convincing to someone listening to that story, and they may even catch on to a couple details to help remember you by. And of course, for those behavioral interview questions and your 8 greats and star answers, they're so much more important when you need to stand out in the crowd. So you want to give credit to other interviewees, but expand on an answer. So if someone's asked their opinion on something and you think kind of the same thing, what are 3 of the most important issues that academia is facing today in the United States? And Craig already said something that you thought was very true. You want to give credit to him and then expand. Part of multiple candidate interviews is to see how you interact with people who may be your competition or who may be your peers. And so you'd never want to be rude or override someone, but Yes, I completely agree with Craig's vision on this, and I see how he got that answer. I would also add that, and then you become very credible. Don't interrupt anyone. And it's also, like I said, about how you interact with others, especially when you disagree. So if Craig said something that you think is not correct and that you would like to contradict that, you would want to give credit that I see where Craig is coming from. However, from my point of view, this. And then you explain yourself, and it doesn't become a gripe on him or belittling his opinion. It comes on what you think, and the focus is on you. So that's how multiple candidate interviews can really work to your advantage. Let's go on to phone interviews. Yes, we've all had them. Here's some things to think about with phone interviews. So make sure you know who's calling whom. What if you're 1 minute away from the appointment time and then you went, oh my gosh, I can't remember. Am I calling them or are they calling me? So make sure they're calling you, they know your number. If you're calling them, you know exactly their number and who to ask for. I would say call on the dot. If it's at 2 p.m., call at 2 p.m. or just as it changes to 2:01. So precision is pretty important. Make sure that you're in a place with a secure signal and that it's quiet. If you are using your cell phone, make sure that you really trust your cell service and that you never get any feedback or you're in a place where you know it won't drop. Concise answers become even more important. The hardest part about a phone interview in my opinion is that you're not quite sure if you're being concise enough, and this goes out to how to end your answers. A lot of people get in the trap during phone interviews to just keep talking and talking, and they've actually given a great star answer from one of their 8 greats and they were really happy with it, but they got no feedback from the people on the other end, so they don't know if they should stop talking or not. So one of the ways to do that is to end your answers strategically. So you might say at the end of the answer, and that is how I worked well in a team. So you wrap up the question that they asked in the first place. That will let the people on the other end know that you're done. You can also say at the end of your answer, did that answer the question the way, is that the type of information that you were looking for? Did that answer the question the way that you expected me to? And so it puts it back on them to respond. You can also say, and that's the main part of my answer. Is there any particular part of my story that you would like me to elaborate on? And again, it puts them back on them to respond, and you're not just talking on and on after you've already had a great answer, and then you weaken it by talking too much. The great thing about phone interviews is that you can use resources. You can have your notes out, your computer on, a website up. Make sure that you don't rely on them completely because you don't want to shuffle papers or stop answering your question because you have to find a certain website, but it does help you in that preparation. In terms of your projection and your voice, stand because it actually helps you project more and it makes you feel more confident and more active. And smile. People can actually hear through the phone when you're smiling, and it's a way to help you shine in conjunction with talking about those great experiences that you've had through the phone, and it's a way to help you stand out. Another version of phone interviews is now the Skype interview. So this is being seen more and more. Some of what I have for you is the same as the phone interview. However, for someone who has not used Skype or is not too confident with technology, I would say to test it beforehand. So get a friend and test calling each other and make sure that you know the technology of it. Again, make sure you know who's calling whom. Make sure your background is appropriate. So you want something pretty plain that's not going to distract the viewers. And you also want something appropriate. So not too loud of colors. Bookshelves in the back are actually, you'd think that they'd be good because it could show that you'd read, but they're too distracting. So think about your background. Again, you want a quiet room and very good internet connection. Think about your camera angle. You don't want them to be looking up through your nostrils the whole time. And you don't want them to be looking down at your forehead the whole time. And when you talk, you want to actually look right into the camera. It's very tempting to look at yourself on the screen, but what they end up seeing are your closed eyes, basically, because you're looking down. So make sure that you look at the camera when you're talking. When they're talking, it's okay to look at the screen because then you'll be looking at them. Play around with lighting to make sure that they can see you. Again, you get hidden notes, and these have to be a little more discreet. And again, you don't want to have to be shuffling through everything, but it can definitely help you and help calm your nerves if you have your resume, your application, a couple websites printed out there. And again, you want to smile, and this goes back to every interview. You do want to smile. It'll help you feel more confident, and it'll relax you, and it'll give off a great impression. For some people in some industries, they would ask about bringing a portfolio. So have everything, if you do bring a portfolio, have it all proofed first. And again, if it's something that you did for a job or a class, you can elaborate or change it. It doesn't have to, the last thing that you turned in or that you submitted to a supervisor doesn't have to be the last version. Allude to the fact that you have examples when you bring a portfolio, but ask if they'd like to see them. And wait at the end of the conversation or interview to show them your examples. It does break up an interview if you have to stop with an answer, ruffle through your portfolio and pull out an example of a product or material that you have. Just make a note quickly of, oh, I'll show them example number 1 and section number 2 of something. And that's a great way to have a conversational, personal way to end the interview. And that is the end of our 3-part interviewing presentation. I hope this has been valuable information for you, and you're ready to tackle that interview and make a great impression.